Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Simona, for the introduction. It's a pleasure being here. I'm not personally doing research on this disease, but it is good to be able to present the work that we have been done within a consortium supported by the Mariani Foundation over the past 3 years to build up a platform that we hope may be of use for this association as well as for many others. So, well, basically, Mariani Foundation, which, as many of you know, is a foundation supporting research for neuropediatric diseases, a few years ago launched a project to support the building of networks, research networks and research registries. And they founded a number of projects focused on different rare diseases. And eventually, by discussing across partners, we realized that every project would basically duplicate each other, and we just had this sort of a little bit crazy and ambitious idea to put resources together and try build up a single platform that could accommodate a wide number of different diseases. Like rare neuropediatric diseases are a major problem. We're talking here about one of them, and you face daily the difficulties in fostering research and better understanding the natural history and the outcome and trying to find therapeutic strategies. Many of these are still untreatable. And obviously, there is a very important path that needs to be followed from the diagnosis to better understand the natural history of each rare disorder, understand pathogenesis to eventually get to treatment, because this is ultimately what we all aim to, find a cure, find a strategy to halt the disease, to improve the quality of life of little patients. And now is a particularly exciting time for this, not only because we're witnessing a lot of clinical trials in many rare diseases, but also because of progress of genetic strategies as well. We are witnessing new approaches to treat rare diseases, and some of them are even tailored on the specific mutation that the patient may have. So it's really a time of big changes, and obviously it's important to be ready for that. And clearly, to get to treatment and to enter any clinical trial, it is absolutely mandatory to have collection of clinical features that it's going to be systematic and standardized, and can recapitulate the disease history in an appropriate way, and that can also measure the outcome of any potential treatment using quantitative scales and quantitative measures that are not just based on subjective examination by the clinician, but is something that can be recorded and compared with other patients in other, maybe in other countries and so on. So a few years ago, when we started the project, we did a survey of the availability of registries for rare diseases in Italy. There were, a few years ago, 81 registries, and only 25 of them were focused on neurological diseases. You see some examples here. And epilepsies, of course, are an important area. Some ataxias, neuromuscular, because Wildman, Telethon have really pushed this forward importantly over the past few years. But, however, the truth is that for the vast majority of rare neurological diseases, there are no proper registries. And the difficulty in building up a registry, it's based on a number of even practical issues that are costs, the difficulty of design a registry, develop it practically. And I mean, I work on Sjöberg's syndrome and cerebellar malformations, and we've also been struggling a lot, and attempted several times to do a registry, failing a number of times. And nowadays we have to deal also with privacy, GDPR regulation, sustainability. So really, it's not an easy task. So this is where, the idea of RANDER stem from. RANDER is an acronym that stands for Rare Neuropediatric Diseases Electronic Registry, with the idea that instead of building many different platforms, we would try just to do one, bigger, more flexible, that could somehow, collect data from different diseases. So to have just one platform instead of many, obviously it's cheaper to develop and maintain, and if a center, maybe follows patients with different rare diseases, to have just to deal with one platform would ease the bureaucratic steps in terms of, data transfer agreement, ethics, and so on, easy management, and in a few words, inclusivity, simplicity, transparency. So we'll briefly show you how it works. So we are just reaching the end of this 3 years path, and we have now a platform that is actually ready to start being populated. We have run a number of trials, so it's not started yet as, with the registry, but it's really done. And then Davide will present you a short demo just to show you, in real life how it works and give you an example of including a patient with COL1A mutation. So this is a web-based platform developed on REDCap, which is widely used worldwide to host registries. It's hosted on a reliable external server, which is CBeam. CBeam is a company that also provides infrastructure for the Ministry of Health and platform for research projects for the Ministry of Health, the Network for Neuroscience and Neurorehabilitation, so already has a big experience in that. It's GDPR compliant, and for now it only collects clinical data, but we are already working to implement this platform and linking it to a parallel platform that's called XNAT to host MRI images of patients, and also working on the possibility to link VCF files with genetic data, and to build up more sophisticated search strategies. It's divided in 4 main areas: general information, neurological data, extra-neurological involvement, and a number of sections on instrumental genetic data and scales. And it's modular, so because it has to be, it has to host so many different heterogeneous diseases, you can choose whatever you want to fill according to the features of your patient. So it can be tailored to different uses, and it can be filled in a vertical way, meaning you have a different number, different ECRF modules, and you can choose to fill the one that is relevant for your patient and skip others that are not relevant. So for instance, if your patient has kidney involvement, you can go to kidney ECRF, but if there is no kidney involvement, you just skip that. And horizontal, because a number of ECRF are updatable or repeatable over time to capture follow-up and natural history of the disease. Finally, it's in English. It's meant to speak a universal language that it's useful also for international sharing, participation to international project, as each field of render, it's coded on HPO terms. HPO, that is the Human Phenotype Ontology, is an international language to describe phenotypes, and it uses a coding that is the same everywhere around the world. Not only the coded fields are HPO coded, but also the open fields. So if you have to add, some feature that is not present in render, you can type your text, but this is linked to an HPO database in order to make sure that you're not typing, whatever, but you're going to pick up specific HPO terms. So this is the structure, 27 modular ECRF. You see there's a block on personal data, family history, and the possibility of add information on additional family members, information on pregnancy and deliver. There is a neurological part with psychomotor development, general neurological examination, behavior assessment, and then 2 specific ECRF to better describe movement disorders and epilepsy, if any. There is a non-neurological section. It's quite broad. It's really covers nearly all organs of the body, growth, head and neck, limbs, a lot of dysmorphic features, if you want to record them, cardiovascular, genitourinary, and so on. And then instrumental and scales. There's a section on imaging. Genetics, of course, so you can record the gene, the mutation, whatever you have, and you can keep track of samples and biomarkers that have been obtained for your patient and when and what type, and then a number of scales. And finally, there's a recap diagnostic ECRF that summarizes the main feature of the patient and the clinical and genetic diagnosis that has been achieved. We're just also trying to make this instrument innovative and useful also for other aspects. And in collaboration with Ludovica Pasca, we are including a section on patient-reported outcome measures, which we think are a very important part, and that is, gaining more and more attention also, in international projects and so on, with dedicated questionnaires for the patients and caregivers to fill. How does it work? Well, at the moment, RarE has been thought to be center-specific. So it's a hospital or a university that actually records and gains access to the platform. There is an approval from an ethics committee, and we are preparing an information sheet and consent that can be obviously tailored to everyone's need, but it represents like a basis, an example. And then, the center needs to sign an agreement with the Mariani Foundation. This is the part that is still being developed because Mariani Foundation is taking a bit of time to decide how they want to structure this, but this agreement will basically, regulate the way everyone can use RarE as a registry, share the data, and so on. And besides of this, the hosting platform needs to be nominated as responsible for treatment of data. These are the only admin steps that need to be done at the beginning, and once all this is done, it's okay. Patients, obviously, or legal representatives need to sign an informed consent in which they agree that their pseudonymized data are loaded on this platform. They agree that data are analyzed for research purposes, and if they want, they agree their data to be shared with other centers for research projects. So all this can be customized. It can vary from disease to disease, from project to project. It's not fixed, and it can be really decided in a flexible way. It has been thought in a way that each center remains controller of its own patient's data, and it's only able to see data from that same center. So there is no that everyone sees data from any other center. This is to protect, as much as possible the independence of each center. But obviously, data are collected in a harmonized way, and it's then extremely simple to share them with the same format, for any collaborative project. It's all pseudonymized. We use a specific algorithm to encrypt the social security number, our codice fiscale, and this creates a univocal code for each patient in Italy and allows to check for duplicates in the database. Obviously, if we want to open it outside Italy, we need to, adapt the system also for other countries, but it's probably relatively easy. RarE will be queryable for aggregated data. So although everyone can only consult individual data from its own patients, each center, it can search the database in an aggregated way, how many cases are with a certain diagnosis or with a certain feature, and these can foster collaborations and contacts. And clearly, you know, upon specific agreements, research projects, and so on, data sharing is extremely simple. I put here in green an issue that we're still discussing on, and it might be interesting also in, you know, hearing your opinion, because we're discussing whether a patient association could also sign the agreement instead of the institution. And this is being requested by a number of associations to, you know, be the one to, you know, get the contact and say, okay, we take responsibility for filling the data. Actually, the way it's designed now, if you see here, you know, like different centers, and every center obviously is the data controller, and it's the legal representative of the hospital or the university or whatever that signs the agreement usually, and then authorizes the clinician to fill the data, like it happens in every institution. You know, well, the legal representative is the controller of the data according to the GDPR, and then all the clinicians, all the users are just authorized to treat the data. And then they will fill the data into render, but data will remain compartmentalized, okay? So this is just to protect safety, to protect privacy in a way, and collaborations can only occur at the next level upon specific agreements across centers. So we've been reasoning, if it's an association instead of a hospital or a center that signs the agreement, how can the clinicians be selected, you know, to feed the data and authorize? So this is something that we do need to discuss a little bit. With the Mariani Foundation, there will be a website dedicated to render for open dissemination that will also, you know, we hope favor collaboration and promote research and promote contacts between centers who have patients with rare diseases. And this is something that has been discussed but not really started yet, to develop maybe also an intranet space in which, for instance, patients can give specific consent for certain projects and so on. This is an idea that is not funded yet. It's feasible. If the project will grow and it will work out, it's something that can be done in the future. This is just an example of data retrieval. We've included some patients with Schubert syndrome just to test the platform. And these just are examples of very easy queries that you can do, you know, for instance, percentage of clinical features, or, you know, like in this case, we queried the type of dysmorphism that were present in our cohort of 60 patients with Schubert syndrome, and this isn't just another example, an association of retinal dystrophy with the different genes, so querying the genetic diagnosis versus the, you know, feature of retinal dystrophy. Just a few examples, but any query, simple or more complicated, is of course possible. So I'll now stop and leave the stage to Davide, who along with Ludovica has prepared this practical presentation. And the example is just to show you the inclusion and render of one call for 1A patient. These are the features, and Davide will show you, you know, certain, for the sake of time, certain fields have already been pre-filled. Others will be filled online, so you'll see how easy it is. And we'll just cover imagining that this patient has, you know, all these features that you see in the slide here. Okay, so if you can please send the video. Davide is connected, but he's in Edinburgh at the moment. He couldn't be in person at the moment, so we've recorded this video, and but then he can also answer questions at the end.
Good morning, everybody. I am Davide D.Politano, a child neurology and psychiatry resident working in Mondino Foundation in Pavia and collaborating with Professor Valente on this project. Today I will show you how render database works. There will be pages which I will have already completed before showing you, and pages which I will complete before your eyes to show you all the functions of the database. The patient data I'm entering is derived from a real patient, but some clinical information has been modified modified and added for the purpose of this presentation. The patient I will describe, which clinical informations are on the left, is a 13-year-old patient with a pathological prenatal history, later showing a mild global developmental delay and intellectual disability, and associated ocular and genitourinary abnormalities. The patient had a diagnosis of COL4A1-related syndrome. Some fields will not be completed, although necessary, and this is done in order to make the presentation shorter. Let's start from looking at the dashboard, which keeps all the patients included in the database, and we go to our patient, which is not a new record that you can do by clicking here, but it's already included because I already filled in the pages. Let's go to the first instrument, which is the personal data, which includes all the clinical information relating to the patient, in particular the center record ID, which is a pseudo-anonymization mode to put the record into the database, and all the anagraphical information of the patient. And here is the drop-down list, one of the most important. You can put complete if the instrument is complete, incomplete if it needs further information to be included, and unverified if you've not verified if it is complete or not. If you put complete and save and exit the form, it will appear as a green dot. If incomplete, as a red dot. If unverified, as a yellow dot. If many statuses are present, you can see here that you have like more dots on the same, like for example for scales, and this is done by clicking on the plus sign, which allows you to put more and more clinical information each time the patient comes to visit. So I will show the pregnancy and delivery. The patient is born at term. Pregnancy relevant events, yes, because the patient had oligodramnios. So here is the field, so it's already in the format. And the prenatal imaging abnormality, since the patient had ventriculomegaly in utero, so yes, but ventriculomegaly is not present, but we have fetal central nervous system morphology, and so it becomes deeper and deeper as a clinical phenotyping. And we put ventriculomegaly. Then there are all the other informations already included. There can be the possibility to enter data which are not already included in the drop-down list, like for example birth weight. You can fill in with the birth weight you want, and then you can put incomplete if you think that oxological parameters are important, so that you can fill them in as soon as you have them from the patient. Then we can go to the psychomotor development, which is very important for the neuropediatric diseases. This is done by dividing motor, language and communication, and behavior and social development. Each important milestones of development is included, so you can put acquired or not. You can specify the month at which the patient acquired the milestone, and you can also put if regressions occurred at some point in the patient's life. Another instrument that I want to show you is general and neurological examination. This is very important because each field can be assessed with neurological assessment, and you can also have a very deep general assessment that looks at different systems, and the database reminds you to fill in the form because each of this section has an instrument. Okay, so you can later fill in more deeply. Then we go to the ocular system, which I think is one of the most important in this patient. The patient has bilateral congenital cataract, so we can put yes on anterior segment abnormalities because the lens is present in the anterior section. Then click on lens abnormalities and subspecify. Okay. Then, for example, the patient has retinal arterial tortuosity, which is a posterior segment abnormalities. So we put yes, and retinal arterial tortuosity is not there because it's very, very particular as a kind of sign. So we put other, and disappears. This is a field very important because you can put it in it each type of information you want, but you have to do it in a standardized way. This is an HPO related term section, so you need, for example, in this case, tortuosity. We can look tortuosity. Here you are. You can retinal arterial tortuosity. So you have a standardized way to introduce something that is not present in the database, and it's very, very important because it keeps you away from redundancies and things that are not the same depending on the observer. Okay, so we can save and exit this form. I want to show you the imaging section, which is very important because it gives you the possibility to divide each of the things that you notice in supratentorial, infratentorial, vascular and extraparenchymal abnormalities. For example, this patient shows malformation of cortical development, which is unilateral parietal schizencephaly, so it's a supratentorial abnormality. It's a cerebral cortex abnormality, so other lists appear, and we can go with malformation of cortical development, schizencephaly, parietal, unilateral. So as you see, it's very, very deep as a clinical characterization. You can also avoid putting other clinical information if you don't have it, so you can choose how deep you want to go with the phenotyping. You can also add other section to it, for example, other cerebral cortex abnormalities by clicking here, or you can also put other alteration, for example, white matter. The white matter section appears. Here you have specified other supratentorial relevant information that is an open field, so you can put each type of information that is not present above. Okay, so we can go directly to another page by clicking here, save and changes and leave. I want to look at the genetics and to run through this page with you. In the genetics section, you can put if the diagnosis is definite, is the type of inheritance, the ACMG classification, transmission, the type of variant, if it is mosaic or not. You can put the gene by actually typing for it, and it appears, and it is a way of standardization run through the OGG, which is a database of genes, and you can go with call4A1. Okay, and you can put all the specificities related to the variant. Okay, then I want to show you the scales, which is very important nowadays because you need to fill in clinical outcomes and natural history for disease. Scales has been done more than once. In fact, there are more dots because the patient came to our hospital more than once. So at 2 years, we filled in the neurodevelopmental profiles where you have the Denver, the Griffith Mental Developmental Scale, the Bailey, and each of these scales have scores that needs to be filled in order to track the patient during time. And we can go to the second section, which is when the patient is no more 2 years old, but is 13 years old, as you can see, and you have all the cognitive profile that you may assess, and in this case the WISH, the vascular scale for 6 to 16 years. There are a lot of cognitive profiling, and it is very important because it depends on the disease you're studying, the adaptive level, the motor functioning, the psychiatric and behavioral assessment, the autism assessment, the ADHD assessment, and so on. So it is very deep as an instrument. Then I want to show you the biochemistry. The biochemistry is important for this patient because they can have CBK elevated, but creatine phosphokinase is not present in this section, so you can fill it with other, and this one appears. So you can put in every type of blood value that you want. At last, not least, we have the family member section that I want to show you. It is very interesting because if you have another patient in the same family, you can specify it, for example, in this case, the father, and you can also choose if it is enrolled in RarE. So if you put yes, you can insert the center of record ID for this patient, and you can link this patient to the other patient, and it's very useful. So thank you for your attention. I hope this helps you.
Okay, so it was quick, and I hope you had an idea of how it works. It seems complicated, but eventually, you know, it's all modular, so you really feel what you need, and it could be. Can I have the slides? Okay, thank you. And so the idea is just, you know, you eventually go only where you need and you skip all the others, and the fact that you have a branching structure with sub-trees and sub-trees, it allows you just to stay general or to go deeper and deeper as you want. So, well, this is, you know, a little bit the philosophy that is behind RarE. It's a single platform, can be used for many different diseases. So the hope is that, you know, maybe child neuropsychiatrists or neurologists working on different neuropediatric diseases may use the same instrument and may become familiar with the same instrument to record patients with different diseases. It has same access rules for every participant. It's economical. I mean, we're Mariani Foundation, it's reasoning on the way to make this sustainable over time, and but eventually, you know, it's not like a big challenge because it's a single platform. It's flexible, as you've seen, and it could also be useful for undiagnosed patients, you know, like at the beginning, to keep track of the natural history or the phenotype, even before, you know, maybe a genetic diagnosis has been reached, and this could serve also to exchange interesting cases, and so on. The language and the HPO should make it compatible also with other networks or other platforms, and the idea is to have it like a translational instrument that could really be useful to back up clinical trials. So that's the team, and I really need to thank every one of them, the group, the neuropsychiatrists who helped developing all the neurological part, the genetics team who designed all the extra neurological section, obviously all the bioengineers and bioinformaticians who actually did the work and developed the REDCap platform, and Ludovica and Caterina who coordinated with me all this big effort. We're ready to launch it. We really hope, you know, people will be interested and use it, and that would be the, you know, the greatest success is to have something that could become useful at large. Okay, thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Some questions? Professor Bertini?
So interesting. So the main question would be that if you need specific scales, because you are applying for natural history, can you include them? Is there a way to include them in the general system?
Yes, absolutely. There are quite a lot of scales. Davide has just shown those more related to neurodevelopment and cognitive, but there are also scales for ataxia. There are also motor scales already included. But if For example, a new important scale is being developed and needs to be added. It can be added as a new ECRF in the platform. This can be very easily developed. Of course, the patients included before will be empty for that, for that scale, but it can be filled also in a second moment. So yes.
Because of course, that there's a lot of discussion for many diseases now going into treatment, in which there is a selection of scales. So, so it would be a platform where you can, in some way, have the possibility to add these scales and then start a specific collection of
it will be just one extra ECRF that needs to be designed, but it's very easy and included. And we're already talking to, like association and clinicians who are interested in render and follow patients with different techniques, and we've been asking, okay, why don't you have a look? Is there anything you need? Because otherwise this can be implemented, especially now in this early stage, but even later on. Obviously, what cannot be done is just change completely the structure of the ECRF, because once there are data in, clearly this cannot be changed, but anything can be added. Yeah.
Other questions?
I have a question concerning policy of access to this database.
No, it is not open.
Non è acceso, forse da sopra.
If I understood well, you cannot access the registry if you come from, say, the outside, the set of partners which implement data on it. So if you stay outside, if you are a clinician somewhere and want to access this data, you cannot do that. Even, of course, if you take, of course, interaction with the registry management. Is it true that? So, I mean, it's...
okay, I'll try to explain.
So you can
this.
access the registry only if you belong to the internal set of partners which contributed to it. Is it correct?
Okay, so the idea is that if you record to use the platform, okay, your institution mainly.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, you can enter how many patients as you want, and you can see only data from your patients. So even if you collaborate with another hospital next door and the hospital includes their own patients, you are not allowed to see the individual data of those patients. You can just query aggregated data, global features, but cannot see those data. But obviously your data and the data of your colleague are collected there exactly in the same way, in the same methodology. And
that's for sure, but I cannot access them. Unless I take some agreement with them, etc. So I mean, it's a very strict policy, you know. So it cannot be used from the outside for doing support to diagnostic support to other clinicians, which could have interest, to understand what you did.
Yeah, I don't think there's any registry that can be just freely accessible by everyone
not freely,
outside.
of course. Normally there is a scientific committee which can approve or reject, interest to access to, say, a specific type of disease. No, maybe you can be a clinician coming from nowhere and have needs to access to data for a specific syndrome, which may be rare, and so I think that this can be at least conceived as a possible way to interact. The other question is concerning the type of data. Do you have some for the genetic data? You just record the type of gene which is somehow involved in the syndrome. Do you have some possibility of putting into this database also, say, exomic data or transcriptomic data? Because once you do at the moment, it's even simpler to make a whole exome instead of looking at a specific gene. So I mean, if did you think to which can be a good, and then for the sampling, you quote in the list of issues samples and biomarkers. Which type of sample do you collect? Tissues or organoids or whatever, or just blood? Thank you.
So the question Well, about samples first, this is just a table, okay, where the clinician records which samples has taken. The clinician can need blood, RNA, skin. There's a table with a list of samples, and it keeps track of when that patient has been sampled, for which sample, and at what time. So it's a sort of registry, let's say, of the samples that are biobanked, I imagine, locally. This depends on the research project. This depends on the clinician who's taking the samples. So there's not a general rule. For a certain disease, you may want a skin biopsy. For another one, you may want just plasma or RNA or whatever. And what was your other question?
The other question was on the genetic data.
Yeah, the genetic data. At the moment, you can record relevant mutations in the ECRF, even to detail. So you can annotate what you have found that you think is relevant, and we usually have included either pathogenic, likely pathogenic, or VUS, so you can specify, you know, if you want to record maybe a VUS, but it's up to you to record it. We're developing the possibility to link a VCF file to the data and imaging data to the clinical data. So this will be an implementation to have a searchable VCF that can come from an exome, for instance, or, you know, another diagnostic testing that can be linked. But this was born to be at the beginning like a clinical data collection. Obviously, it keeps track of the diagnosis, of the type of mutation, and so on. And that has been thought as a possible implementation. Regarding your first question, yes, you are right. That is a major decision. You know, you want to make it open to whoever in the scientific community asks for the data. You need to have a commission. This commission needs to be stable, needs to be more or less expert of different diseases, because projects can involve different diseases, it can be different. So it's a layer of complexity a little bit higher. How it is now, it allows all sorts of collaborations, but these are open to the clinician, to the people. So if you can browse and you can contact other clinicians who have patients with that diagnosis and establish collaborations and share the data very easily. Yeah, but it's not, there's not at the moment, you know, at this stage, that layer of complexity to have a committee and so on.
So you have to get in first, and then you access
Yes.
Yes.
the other data. Okay, thank you.
Okay.